We have one of the most remarkable thinkers on the commons and commons governance joining us online now. Michel Bauwens is the founder and director of the Peer-to-Peer Foundation, and if tech is with us, and I'm walking towards them to see if they're with us, we will have him tune in now on Skype. Great. You know what this means? He's online. Can we have Michel Bauwens, please?
Yes, I'm there.
Hi, Michel. How are you?
Hi. I'm fine. I'm in a hotel room in Gran Canarias.
Indeed. But it's work. It's work, not play. Trust me. There he is. Hi, Michel. Wave to the room. Hi. Hello. Right. It's fantastic that you can join us. I know you're in the middle of another conference. Michel has been a thinker on the commons for many years, and his peer-to-peer foundation is one of the most phenomenal open source platforms for thinking and sharing knowledge about the commons. And he's going to give us a few thoughts to start off with on why we're talking about the commons and what has been happening in thinking about the commons over the last 10 years. Michel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, so I might start with just an example of why, in my mind, there is a particular link to the commons and the future of our economies and societies. And so about 2 years ago, in the spring of 2016, I did a study of the urban commons in the city of Ghent in the north of Belgium. And we noticed a tenfold increase in the number of urban commons in the city, which has now been confirmed by a study of the whole country of Belgium. And I just want to give you one example, which illustrates why I think it's such a powerful method. So this is a profit car sharing project. It's called Dégage. It has 1,300 members and 130 cars. Now, it guarantees full mobility, so anybody who is a member of this organization can have a car whenever they want. Calculated, that's how it affects. The cost of it is 80% less than having a private car. And a study, the stability effect, showed that every shared car replaced 9 to 13 private cars. Why I'm saying this? Because I want to show you that there's a very strong aspect of social inclusion because the costs go down to mutualization. And second, footprint of the capacity of maintaining this complex service of mobility at a much lower thermodynamic cost is, I think, exactly what we need today. I won't go into this, but just to say that there is actually a historical connection between periods of overshoot and periods of demutualization and recommodification of economic structures, and we're in the middle of it. I send a slide, but if you don't show them, it's no problem. Just to say that the commons have definitely a economic and governance structure. So basically, what I discovered that the structures, the digital economy, the digital commons-oriented economy, let's say the open source economy, and the emerging urban commons is actually the same. I think that's very interesting. So this is a brief explanation of this. Well, first of all, at the core of the value creation today, it's not capital and labor. It's contributions towards a shared resource. And so at the core of the value creation in common system, you have to look at the open contributory community. So this is a big difference with older systems, even NGOs. The the commons economy has a open contributory system as the heart. So in Ghent, even if I looked at one example was a community that's managing an abbey and park, it very clearly says today everybody who contributes is a member of the community. So this notion of a system where everybody can contribute, like in open source, is also being applied in urban commons. I think this is very different from membership organizations, classic hierarchical organizations, and the like. So this is where it happens. And you would look at open source, you would see maintainers, you would see editors, you would see this second layer of people that are defending the integrity of the ecosystem in which they are working, right? Okay. Second, if you scratch a little bit, you will find that behind those communities are infrastructural organizations. So if you look at Wikipedia, you will find Wikimedia Foundation. You look at Linux, you would find Linux Foundation. And we found it was exactly the same in the urban commons. Behind the projects are institutions, a new type of institutions, which enable and empower technology of cooperation. So they don't, it's not a command structure, they don't tell people how to produce and what to produce, but they're a neutral organization, a neutral governance organization, which makes sure that all the stakeholders have access to this infrastructure of cooperation. They maintain it throughout time. And I think this is a very important second aspect of commons projects, to see where is that organization? Is it neutral? Can it mediate between, you know, the state, the private, and the social? So then there is a third institution, which I call the entrepreneurial coalition. If a commons want to exist in the longer term, if it wants to be more or less independent of a particular subsidy stream, then it will create an economy around it. So what you see is that around commons, once they start working after 5 or 10 years, you will see entrepreneurs trying to make a living from their engagements to the common. Of course, that's very obvious with the open source economy, which is 1/6 of GDP in the US. We had IBM buying a 34 billion Red Hat, which is one of the major open source companies. So I think it's important to you encounter commons or you want to stimulate commons, that you look at those three different aspects. So what we see in Europe and actually the whole world, because there was a study by LabGov, which is called Go Cities, and I participated in examining the 41st case studies, is that there is an emerging toolkit regulation that is emerging that regulates the public commons corporation. The best example would be to look at Italy and the Bologna regulation for the care and regeneration of the urban commons. For those of you who are familiar with Ostrom and the book Governing the Commons, you will know that for a commons to exist for a time, it has to be recognized by public authority. Because if it's not, more the police can come and destroy it. So it's important to have a framework for making accords between the Commons project and its community or multi-stakeholder governance system and the public authorities of the particular territory. So what they did in Italy, it's called the Commons Accord. The Bologna regulation is one example of it, which basically gives the right to citizens to say, I want to care for that resource, and this is the agreement we make between city and commons of the region of how this would work. And the public authorities are then conveners of support. So they don't manage the project, but they say, okay, for this to work, we need a research organization, we need a civil organization, we might need a commercial organization, and they create the coalition of support that will be, contextual for this particular project. I think this is an interesting development. The second thing I would like to talk about is make a very important point, is that technology is not neutral. In other words, it really matters that you look at the socio-technological design of the systems you'll be working with. I will say a bit of a good thing about blockchain later, but I want to critique it first. It's very important to distinguish what I call netarchical systems, the hierarchy of the network, which is the Facebooks and the Googles, who enable peer-to-peer interactions, but where the whole technology is centralized, proprietary, and 100% of the exchange value is going to the proprietors. So even though you can use it, it's free technology, it doesn't give any freedom of governance to the communities themselves. You're totally dependent on decisions that are made by the proprietors of the platform. The second scenario is what I call distributed capitalism, which is where the blockchain world comes from. And basically the idea is we're all individuals, we're all atomized, we can't trust each other. Therefore, we need to have contracts as if every individual is an entrepreneur, and we will verify that through the blockchain. It's important to know there is an underlying value system, and that, for example, the mechanisms of governance, they're oligarchic. The more you use them, the more centralized the power in the distributed system. So I think that it's important as a development organization to tweak, transform, commodify those technologies. For example, if we want to set up a platform that's now a very rapidly growing movement called platform cooperativism, where yes, we enable and facilitate the peer-to-peer exchanges and creation of common goods, but the platform itself is the property and is governed by the stakeholders, not by external proprietors. So this is something I invite you to look at from cooperativism and the platform cooperativism consortium. And basically we can do the same with blockchain technology. We could have cooperative games instead of competitive games, which is the governance, the incentive model of most blockchain projects. We could have Ostrom contracts instead of smart contracts. So what I'm trying to say here is that we shouldn't just take technology as it is, but should be careful about the underlying values that it is carrying within itself. But I like particularly, and I kind of can make a bridge to the next speakers, because I'm a fairly big fan of Regen network. Is the idea of transposing the open source model of open contributor systems to the world of impact. And the specific notion of circular finance. I think the structural problem we are having in current system is that there is no generic funding for generative work. In other words, we create wealth by extraction of people and resources, and then eventually through taxation of subsidies, we try to remedy the negative externalities created by extraction.
Michel.
Yes.
You've given us a series of very important starting points.
I actually need 2 minutes before I finish.
Exactly. So
sure.
If you round off in the next 2 minutes, then we will work with these starting points. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So what I like about the Regen network is the idea that we can open up change, impact to an open contributory system. We can actually create a framework, an ecological state protocol that says anybody can do impact, can decarbonize, can create biodiversity. And then we tokenize this, right? And then we can actually negotiate how to fund these tokens. In other words, we can make agreements between impact commons and institutions that benefit from positive social and ecological externalities to start funding in a virtuous circle. And I just want to give an example and then I finish. So this is in France, Théodélien, a big community land trust, 65 million euro capital, which has proven that the more organic farmers they have in a French département, the less depollution costs for the state and water agency. This is a prime example in which you could say, and this is what IBM did actually with open source, so it's possible for the private sector. It's basic to say, recognize our positive impact, right? So if you're saving X million euros, set 30% aside, set 20% aside, create this virtuous cycle. And this, of course, will be greatly helped by these kind of new types of technologies that are emerging. I think that are the points that I want to make.
Thank you so much, Michel. So here we are, a series. Let's give him a round of applause. That's absolutely.